Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marshall Conley, and I'm a senior technical assistance consultant with REL Midwest, and I'm going to be your host today as we explore our recent study on technology use in classrooms in Iowa. As Cora mentioned a few minutes ago, we're using Zoom today. Here's the reference slide that she shared earlier. And three main things you need to know. If you can't hear me and you can just see me talking, then you need to join the audio. One way you can communicate with us is via the chat. So there's a chat function. Usually the toolbar is at the bottom of your screen. And then if you do, we do provide live closed captioning for you as well. And there's a button for that too. So we are going to go ahead and get started. If I can control this. All right, there we go. So like I said, I'm Marshall Conley. I'll be joined by my colleague, Jonathan Margolin, principal researcher and lead on the study today. And we are going to spend a little bit of time explaining to you who we are and what REL Midwest is, for those of you who are unfamiliar. Jonathan's going to talk through our study. And then we have some guest panelists today from Central Rivers Area Education Agency in Iowa who worked with us not only on this study, but on the coaching project that partnered with it, through which we organized a networked improvement community focused on technology use in classrooms. So that's our agenda for today. If you have questions for me, for Jonathan, for any of the panelists, go ahead and put them in the chat. There will be some time for question and answer at the end. But other than that, let's get started. So if you're unfamiliar, REL Midwest works with school districts, state education agencies, and other organizations within Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. And our the general work we do applied research projects like the one we're going to talk about today. We provide technical support, which could be coaching, professional learning, and other technical support, such as the network improvement community that partnered with the study, and then engagement activities like this webinar to help our partners, who are all of you and the folks in the states we serve, use the data and research to meet your goals, improve outcomes for students, and work to improve education writ large. So how do we do this? Well, we form collaborative research partnerships with stakeholders in the different states we serve. We work with those partners through those partnerships to address priorities of the states, and we support research alliances as well as a network improvement community and other emerging projects and partnerships across our region to really push forward efforts to use evidence to improve outcomes for kids. And why? Well, we want to solve practical problems. We want to advance fundamental understandings of education challenges and processes and improve student and teacher outcomes by looking at testing and applying solutions and really using evidence to drive that improvement forward. So today we're talking about a couple of things on this slide. One, we're going to talk about an applied research study. So one of the areas of work that REL does, and you are attending an event to support that study. So here, among other things, we put on workshops related to our studies, related to our technical support. We provide coaching in states, in districts. In Iowa, it was with an area agency, which is a regional organization. Similarly, we provide technical support, and that could be professional development. It could be lit reviews, helping practitioners develop tools. We review studies and interventions through a lens of ESSA evidence tiers, and we provide the Ask a REL service through which we can provide annotated bibliographies to your questions. So that's REL Midwest, and as I said, we're going to talk about one of our applied research studies today. So I'm going to pass the ball here to my colleague, Jonathan, and he's going to talk about our study in Iowa.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marshall, for setting that up. So In Iowa, as Marshall mentioned, we conducted a study with the Central Rivers Area Education Agency and focusing on some of the particular concerns in Iowa. We start off with a recognition that technology can provide opportunities for learning the skills that are essential for 21st century workplaces. The challenge that the Area Education Agency, or Central Rivers AEA, brought to us is that districts realize that they need to support teachers' use of education technology, and that in some cases, districts are finding that the way teachers are using the technology was not in ways that they envisioned supporting the learning of 21st century skills. And there's a real strong interest because Iowa is predominantly a rural state in technology use in the rural context. So that's setting the background. Okay, just pausing here while I get my controls working. Okay, so I mentioned that there's a strong interest in 21st century skills in Iowa. Enshrined in the Iowa core standards are what they call the universal constructs for 21st century success. And I know many of you have seen these before as part of the 21st century skills framework. These are the learning skills, the 4 C's: collaboration, creativity, complex communication, and critical thinking. Also in the universal constructs, they have flexibility and productivity, which were not included in our study for reasons I'll explain in just a moment. So there's a recognition that these 4 learning skills are paired with technology in 21st century workplaces, and that the education that students get in high school should incorporate technology with these schools. So for example, when it comes to collaboration, just working among and across personal global networks, they want to see teachers encouraging students to collaborate online with students. Creativity, they want to see students learning how to create art and music, for example, or other products using technology. Complex communication, several examples of this, one of which is writing online reviews and blog posts. That is using technology to share information through multiple means. And also critical thinking, which is accessing and analyzing key information to develop solutions to complex problems, to use technology such as analyzing data from online sources. In the nice graphic, you see an Excel spreadsheet, something like that. So in this study, the purpose was to determine the classroom practices, teacher perceptions, and the challenges related to ed tech use in rural schools. So we have a few research questions. How frequently do teachers ask students to use technology in ways that promote the 21st century skills? Do they perceive that technology enhances learning? How confident are teachers in their ability to use and select education technology? And how much does professional development support teacher use of technology, and how do schools provide technology? How much do schools provide technology infrastructure and support? So in just a moment, we'll talk about our participants. The participants in this study were 26 schools in Central Rivers AEA out of 54, and that encompassed 524 teachers out of 800. So where did these, how did they come to participate? Well, I'll describe that in conjunction with our data source. The schools received the Bright Bytes Clarity Teaching and Learning module prior to the study. And this was some technology that the consortium of AEAs provided to every district in this AEA. And it was up to the schools whether or not they would use this module. And his 26 schools used the module to complete some survey of teachers in 2017. And we obtained those data from the Central Rivers AEA. And it was all completely anonymized. In this survey, I think the I should emphasize it, that this was not a survey that REL Midwest or Central Rivers AA created. It was already being used as part of a management tool that schools decided whether to use or not. It had the following topics which were relevant to our research questions. Actually, in the interest of time, I'll just go through this quickly. I think it's useful to note the number of items on the different topics. So with technology use, the first research question, there's an item about frequency of computer use, and then 18 items about technology use aligned to the 21st century skills. There are 3 items about teachers' perceptions of the benefits of technology use. And then research question 3 about the confidence of using technology, ed tech. 4 items about confidence in technology integration into instruction, and 9 items about technology use in general. And then with professional development, 3 items about the professional development time and 3 items about professional development quality. Yes, so I'll go on. And then about the infrastructure and support, 3 items about the frequency of technology discussions, 7 items about tech support, and 1 item each about internet access, policy, and access to devices. So where you're seeing multiple items per topic, what we're doing is we're combining them into a single scale for ease of interpretation. And here are major findings. I'm going to skip over the first slide, and that's not the main focus. I'm just going to go to talk about technology use for 21st century skills, more of our central focus today. The main finding is that when we're looking at the percentage of teachers reporting an emphasis on each of these skills, we're finding about a quarter are reporting emphasizing the use of technology to promote creativity and communication. And those are the percentages of teachers who are using technology in at least 2 different ways to promote creativity at least once a month. So it's not a real high bar. So you find about a quarter of teachers are using technology to promote creativity and communication, somewhat greater, closer to or around, let's say around 50% for critical thinking and collaboration. So that's overall across teachers. So we also wondering how this might look when you break it out by different types of teachers. So we looked at this as a function of subject area. And this particular chart is looking at frequency use of technology for communication, but it's representative of a similar pattern you see for both communication, collaboration, and creativity. And the main pattern is that math teachers, I'm going to pick on them, are the least likely to ask students to use technology in ways that promoted 21st century skills. On the high end, it kind of hopped around. Sometimes it was science, sometimes it was social studies, sometimes English language arts, but they're all fairly high, and consistently math was the lowest. We also looked at technology use by experience level, and we found teachers with 4 to 9 years of experience were the most likely to ask students at least monthly to use technology for collaboration and creativity. And conversely, the teachers with 20 or more years experience were the least likely. Not a huge surprise there, because teachers with the greatest experience also went through their teacher preparation and training in a completely different era when it comes to technology. We found that teachers had a positive attitude towards technology, with about 4 out of 5 teachers saying that they perceived that technology enhanced student learning. Similarly, about 4 out of 5 teachers perceived that they had the ability to integrate technology, and they're confident in their ability to do so. I should note that when it came to confidence, we saw a similar difference based on teacher experience. So teachers with more than 20 years experience had the least confidence. So when it comes to school support, some good news. About 64% of teachers reported technical support is above average or excellent. What I don't have, that's the top bar. What I don't have here, but I like to mention, is that 93% of teachers report having access to computers for student use. So computers are pretty darn well near saturated in this sample. However, with respect to professional development quality, I think a slight rounding error in our chart here. It should be 30, when you round up to 37% of teachers rated the quality of technology-focused professional development as above average or excellent. Okay, here I want to point out the school supports with professional development. I'd like to draw your eyes not to the top, but to the near the bottom, where it says 55% reported having 1 to 8 hours of professional development focused on technology. Just a moment before I started, I found that we had entered the top bars. It should be 5.9%. Somehow it ended up at 59%. Apologize for that. So ignore the top bar. It's actually the shortest bar. And the main finding is that more than half of teachers reported spending 1 to 8 hours in technology-focused professional development during the past year. And briefly I'd like to summarize some implications of these findings and turn it over to our panel and get their reactions and their discussion on it. So here are a few implications. Teachers use classroom technology frequently. I didn't mention this in the findings, but we find about 9 out of 10 teachers reporting that they're using technology weekly. But the main finding that we displayed today was that they're not consistent in using it in ways that support the development of 21st century skills. So therefore, we conclude, or at least it appears, that teachers need additional support and encouragement in using technology to promote 21st century skills. The professional development findings suggest that they may need additional professional development on how technology can address specific learning objectives, and that is in particular math teachers. So we're just making an inference. If math teachers are not using it, it probably is because they don't see how it advances their curricular goals. And similarly, or I guess a parallel set of findings, is that teachers with the least amount of experience and more than 20 years of experience both tended to have the least use of technology. And so these teachers may need additional training on the use of technology. And as a suggestion, we'd like to just put on the table that school leaders could offer sustained approaches to technology-focused professional development that's embedded in teachers' ongoing professional responsibilities, rather than the intermittent approaches that we observed, as illustrated by the frequency of teachers reporting 1 to 8 hours of professional development per year on technology, and the low levels of 37% of teachers who perceived high levels of quality with that professional development. So I'm going to advance one more slide, and now we can proceed to our panel discussion.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. Now we're really excited, that we've learned about the findings and some implications for the study, and now we get a chance to talk to the individuals who were and are working directly with a lot of the teachers and a lot of the schools that responded to that. So we have Kay, Carrie, and Jeremy all from Central Rivers AEA, and I'd just like each of you, if you could, before we get into our panel questions, take a second and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your role is and how you work with teachers, students, and technology.
Sure. I'm Kay Schmellen. I am a science technology consultant here at Central Rivers AEA. I work mostly with administrators and teachers in their skills around science or technology. We don't work directly with students, but we work directly with the teachers to impact their learning.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Mize. I am the instructional coach at the junior and senior high school level at BGM Community School District. I kind of got wrapped into this willingly, not forced. But back when we were approached to kind of work on the network improvement community about improving technology here, I was on our committee then. And being the instructional coach, I kind of was free to go to all the meetings and do all the participations. I have some decent tech background, so along with the standards that we focused on with the instructional coaching, then we could also kind of work on incorporating technology, so helping the teachers out as we worked on the goals for our network improvement community.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Teskey. I work at Central Rivers with Kay, and I worked with Jeremy in his district, BGM. And my work is similar to Kay's in the sense that we do support teachers and provide modeling and examples and mentoring and instruction to help support their work. And then also I work a little bit in the media side. So I have an opportunity to use items from our media collection and online resources to help teachers facilitate authentic experiences too with their work.
Great. Thank you, Kay, Jeremy, and Carrie. And we'll get into some questions. I'm excited to hear from you today, and great to see you. For background, we all worked together on the networking improvement community through REL Midwest, and so it's great to be with you all again today. So first off, we want to talk about your initial impressions of the study and its finding. You all work with teachers. There were some connections within those findings and those implications related to professional learning. So if you don't mind, please share a little bit about what you thought when you first saw the study and saw some of those findings.
Sure, I can.
Yeah,
sure. I will. I think if you're not familiar with the history of Iowa and tech integration in Iowa schools, as early as 2009, we had districts that were beginning to chose one-to-one. So they would choose, a lot of times it was laptops, and it started with a big movement of Apple and the MacBooks, and now since has moved into Chromebooks. And so we knew that there was a lot of access to technology, but we really knew that we were struggling to see an impact with that. So the study kind of reveals a little bit of some of the clarity data that we use anyway over time, because we've been doing clarity or using it for a long time, is that we knew that there are different directions we needed to head. And with the universal constructs coming into play for the Iowa core, we knew that authentic experiences had kids creating content, collaborating, communicating, and thinking critically. So how can we use that? Because we have this access. And so to me, when I look at some of the work that's been done, I see like avenues of growth. And then I see also where avenues of support need to be led. And definitely that Iowa, I don't think, is unique in this, and that we know that technology isn't the sole answer, but it's about instruction.
Yeah, I agree with Carrie. We're one of the early adopters of one-to-one kind of, and those first few years were really focused on those fundamentals. How do I use it? How do I run it? And now we're really starting to get into how can I get into those universal constructs? And now that the universal constructs are getting more focused on, which is kind of nice, we now have some data to fall back on and say, well, let's work on communication because this might be a weak area, or let's work on collaboration because we know this is a weak area, and technology can help us with that. So yeah, it doesn't surprise us. And yeah, like we've seen this across all our AAs, across all our districts in the AA. So not just the ones who took the survey.
In comparing the results to the teachers at my school, it did kind of fit fairly well. Our initial professional development focused a lot on Google Classroom, which helped teachers with communications to students and student collaborations. So it made sense that those bars were pretty high. And then once the teachers and students start getting comfortable with Classroom and the other Google apps, we've been trying to push more on the critical thinking and creativity, taking it to the next level, rather than just using it for what it is. The experience range that really hit too, kind of with that 3 to 9 year old being, or 3 to 9 years of experience being the key area for those who are pushing with the ed tech. Those 20+ year veterans, it does make sense they weren't brought up on technology, but then also from some of the conversations I've had with them, a lot of it's like, well, it works fine without technology. My lesson's okay as it is, so why do I have to put technology in it? So some resistance to change. And I know with the younger ones, the 0 to 3 year ones, yeah, they've had technology a lot, but they're kind of brand new to teaching. They're still trying to figure out the profession, their content area. Once I think they feel a little bit more comfortable, then adding in the technology works. So I think we need to do a better job maybe of mentoring them and kind of building the two at the same time, and not thinking about technology as an add-in, but how to just kind of have it be there as it's going. But more to think about for later.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to pick up on a couple of things you all said. You noted, the start of the one-to-one movement in the state, and initially, professional learning, I would imagine, was a lot focused on here's this thing and here's how you use it. Here's this device. Here's this hardware. And now you all are trying to evolve that, right? And so, what is it? What are the differences? What does professional learning look like at the evolution point where you're getting more into instruction that's different than what it looks like if you're trying to get somebody to use a Chromebook or trying to get somebody to try a new app?
Well, I think right away it was about, we were a Google state, so that meant that a lot of our districts are using the Google tools and resources. It seemed natural that they would have a lot of questions around how to use that resource. So I think initially it began, here's how you can use a slide deck, Google Classroom, those type of things. Here can you use this Google slide presentation, but not as a slide presentation, but then how can we collaborate and have students connect on there and be authentic in learning? And then over time, it really has boiled down to, okay, we've got a lot of resources. There's lots of information coming our way about new tools and ideas, and it's hard to keep up, we know, but we try to kind of try new things and be risk takers. And then it came to the point now that there's been a lot of shift in talking about the authentic piece of this. Like, let's talk instruction. And now that we've built the toolbox a little bit around what resources you have, how do we engage kids in learning and actually move beyond engaging into empowering kids and give them voice and choice? So some of the things we tried were choice boards and learning menus and ideas that had kids making a little more choice. A lot of the movement in Iowa, we have work-based learning coming about, blended and personalized. So we're trying to really, our roles are shifting for K&I in a sense that we're taking that idea about, hey, here's tech and here are some resources for you, but now we're moving into this phase of instruction and supporting learning. And it looks different in the sense that we're not really necessarily talking about tools, but we're talking about experiences for kids that empower them in learning.
When Carrie did our Google Classroom professional development, so we got a lot of those tools from her. And at the beginning, a lot of teachers were like, oh, okay, I can do this because of this technology, or this app lets me do this. And it was more about learning the tool and then just applying it the way that we were taught. And then once they started to get a little bit more comfortable, it kind of started to change and morph for some teachers. Like, I want to do this idea. Now can I apply this tool to that? Or, hey, kids, go find your own tool. You're digital learners. Go out there, find something that fits. Find your own way to present it. Find your own way to do your presentation. So it was nice seeing some of them rise above just that set use for that set tool and just kind of keep repeating it over and over.
Great. So I appreciate the examples, some of the examples you've provided. So, and when we think about 21st century learning activities and some of the things you've explained, how do they make the classroom experience look different? It's particularly if you've got two classrooms, in one classroom, there's an innovative teacher really pushing the limit. What are her instructional goals and objectives, and how does that classroom look versus someone who's doing things in a more traditional way? What things characterize those differences?
Well, I think they're still based on standards. We've been doing a good job here of focusing on essential standards for every class, and we're still going to be doing that. It's just how they approach them is a little bit more different. Those kind of traditional teachers who don't like a lot of technology, they also tend to have a little bit more kind of control in what they want from their students, and it's do it my way to show me that you're meeting that standard. Versus I've seen the ones that have been embracing the technology more, it's kind of show me your way that you meet the standard. They're a little bit more open to student choice as the technology allows them to do different things.
Thanks, Jeremy. And when you were working with teachers, we've talked a bit about the instructional piece of this. So what does assessment look like now? How does this change what assessment looks like in those classrooms?
So far, we have been getting a lot. Well, it's still the paper pencil for most of them. There are some that are starting to get more into projects where they'll evaluate whatever kind of end piece they have, be it a presentation, be it a poster, be it a slide deck. It's our assessment is kind of our next step we're getting.
Okay.
We're working more on the common formative assessments for our standards and just making sure that no matter what they turn in, we can still identify, are they meeting the standard or not?
We had a question, Marshall, about how do you decide the quality of PD? Well, just to lay the foundation, Jeremy and I went through the clarity data with the staff, so they understood like what avenues were being measured and how they were being measured, and then they helped us set goals for how they felt the PD should go. And so from there, Jeremy and I planned, and then we would reflect with the staff and ask them, for their feedback and survey them about what avenues is this the type of learning they need. And then Jeremy works in the building, so he gets a lot of opportunity as an instructional coach to work with them too as well. So a lot of the feedback was either just a survey, or we would have conversations with the staff, or Jeremy might meet with them one-on-one to make sure that they were continuing to learn, because it wasn't necessarily that everyone was on the same page as much as it was everybody was choosing to grow, like stretching themselves in a new direction they hadn't been before. And as we know, as with anyone, some groups and some individuals have a much faster pace and are more embraced when it comes to new learning, and others are a little more reserved and take their time to have that opportunity to grow. So we differentiated a little bit, provided them some time to grow, got feedback, and that gave us and helped us kind of direct to hoping to meet as many needs as we could. So I don't know if it was definitely a high, medium, low. It was more give us feedback, tell us what you need more of so we can help support learning.
Right. And I do think, the sample for the study and that rating that was referenced by Jonathan covers more than just the folks you work with, Carrie, and just Jeremy's school. So, there's a variety of perspectives and experiences. So do one thing that I always wonder about when I look at data like this is, do you think every teacher understands the difference or what it means to receive PD on technology, right? So do you think some teachers maybe think, oh, I learned how to use the Chromebook, that's PD on technology. I learned this approach to a lesson, maybe I use technology. Do you think they see those things as discretely different, or is the viewpoint starting to kind of merge around, you learn how to use the app in order to improve your teaching skills, as opposed to, you learn how to use an app and that's discretely different than improving your teaching skills.
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, I think that with a resource like you mentioned, I think initially their mindset is set up because their PD is maybe a tech day. And so the idea is that, oh, we're going to cram our brain for all this technology stuff. And then, are we going to ever come back to it? So it has to become a part of the process and happen more frequently than just random times. And so once that's encompassed, and it's either part of your professional learning communities or it's part of AIW or whatever process you're using for instruction, then it's kind of like the air you breathe. Like, this is how I'm using this in this format, that type of thing. And I know when we looked at Clarity, a couple key points for us. Our initial evaluation of Clarity is access. Does everyone have access to devices, and how often and frequency? And so once that barrier we knew was fine, and we didn't have to worry about that, then it was the belief section. What do teachers believe about technology? So as you see in the reflection of the survey, that there was a huge belief, 70, I think, percent at that point in time in our agency. So we have a lot of belief, but yet we still had some doubters out there. So you have to address the belief of why. Why are we doing this? Why is it important? Is it just because we have Chromebooks, or is there some value of instruction that comes with that? So that's kind of the twofold there. And then from there is some basic, here, let's talk about how you can use this resource and feel a little comfortable. But I like what Jeremy said about was that once they got a little confidence, it's like, okay, give it to the kids. Like, hey, here's an avenue. If you want to, we're studying the Egyptian times, and you want to build pyramids in Minecraft, then let's do it that way and label things and walk us through and tell us about what you've learned. So those are, I think, just some key points of the transition that's happening. And it's not, everyone's not at the same level. So that's where you really have to meet people where they are and differentiate instruction as much as possible, but open the possibility of doors to not be afraid and to take risks.
Yeah, with some of our staff, they were totally clueless walking into the PD. So they were kind of at that level where I need to know how to use it, or just what it is. What's Pear Deck? I've never heard of that. There's so many something deck apps out there, Slide Deck, Pear Deck, what are they? Whereas other ones are like, oh, I've used that. Give me some examples to see how it's used in other rooms or other curriculum areas. And then maybe I can apply that to my area, or find something that I like and maybe use it a couple times. And then when I feel a little more comfortable with it, move on.
Great, thank you. So I want to shift the questioning a little bit and move into kind of the utility of data like this. So in REL Midwest, it's great to do research, but we really want it to have an impact. We want people to use it. So, and Carrie, you talked a little bit about how you all use Clarity kind of on an ongoing basis. And so, what do you see from this study, from this review of this data, from many of the implications Jonathan mentioned, that you all think we can take this and we can do something about this right away? I
think one of the things we can take away are the math. Of course, trying to help our math teachers find ways to integrate that with their standards, and finding them the tools that can that are user friendly, that are efficient, and meet their objectives of their lesson. So we recognize that that's our math people, and always trying to support our math consultants as well, and helping them be good models as well.
And I know from taking away, kind of looking at the data, I know I'm going to spend a little bit more time with the veteran teachers, making sure I'm mentioning technology. I usually got to sit next to a couple of them during the PD days, just to kind of help translate between Carrie speak and English for them, so they would understand what was being said. And then I think just kind of keeping up with the PD that we received last year. We were doing great with Google Classroom, and we don't have Carrie this year. So just kind of finding a way to not just let all that work that we built up go. We miss you, Carrie. She'd always bring candy too. So
I can definitely come back. I think too, like one example for me about growth is Jeremy has a teacher in his building that is probably on the scale of the been around and experienced seasoned teacher. And she was at an assistive tech conference that we hosted. And part of the keynote was they were talking about assistive tech, and they were talking about scanning documents in for students for accessibility. And she saw me outside after this keynote, and she said, Carrie, I know that you should not just scan worksheets and have kids do them. And I said, well, I think their point was a little bit about assistive, you know, helping get access. And she's like, I know, but that's just a low bar. Like, because we mentioned and talked about SAMR, and she goes, that's just substitution right there. If I were going to do that, I would make it much better. So I think those conversations and personal relationships after, and, you know, continuing to work together, it helped me realize that, okay, we're having an impact. Like someone that maybe a month or two ago or 6 months ago wouldn't have even thought about how it could impact their work is now really thinking about instruction, in that, yeah, I don't want to have a Chromebook and then have them work on something that they could do on a piece of paper. So how can we change that instruction so it's more something that is of those 4 C's we talked about, that allows the opportunity to collaborate and an opportunity to communicate. And it isn't simply just, okay, instead of, you know, writing your paper on a piece of paper, now we're going to type it up. I mean, there's just so many different opportunities we want to make sure to open the doors for kids.
Another thing, I was really lucky that we have the instructional coaches, and the money is there and the benefits are there, you know, the push is there. And so we recognize that just-in-time learning is really laying with the coaches. They're helping us reach those teachers on a daily basis, and then coming back to us and helping us figure out where we go next. So having the coaches is critical.
Great, thanks. So, and you know, we've talked a lot about kind of, you know, the professional learning for teachers and the resources for teachers. So you all are professional development providers. How do you all make sure that you're keyed into, you know, the newest best ideas, and that you're supported so that you can, you know, who supports the supporters, that kind of thing? Like, where do you all turn for your professional learning?
Well, I've been pretty lucky. I've really never been told no about going to a conference or a class. So I try to talk to my staff and ask what they want me to research for them about, and go to either different classes from the AEA or different ones that are offered. Tech-wise, I'm also working on my computer science endorsement here in the state of Iowa. We're working on that. So taking some computer science classes through UNI and the code.org curriculum. So trying to get as much knowledge as I can from everywhere.
I would say professional learning network. So following, using Twitter as a platform to follow what's happening and trending in education. Lots of blogs and resources like, I love Alice Keeler's work, Casey Bell's work, Matt Miller, Ditch the Homework, all those resources, those individuals that are looking outside the box for learning. Those are people I look to for outside. And then, of course, my colleague Kay and all my other tech guru people in our building, we talk and have meetings and share resources and ideas. And then, of course, we listen to teachers. So when Jeremy has some clever idea, I'm always like, hey, I didn't know that. So those are all, the opportunities come. You just have to be looking for them and build that network so you can keep learning professional. And we do attend conferences, and we went to ISTE 2 years ago. But it's still about that day-to-day learning that you take time to learn and read professional material and things like that. There are a couple questions that people had. Marshall, one was about UDL and SAMR. Jeremy and I did use SAMR, the SAMR model, to help explain why. And so that was part of our work, you know, to kind of talk about where we maybe your lesson would fall and then evaluate it. UDL, we didn't necessarily talk about with Jeremy's group, but there's a lot of discussion of UDL and the work. There's a lot of authentic learning experience opportunities, at least lingo in our world right now, professional blended, deep learning, all that seems to come into play. So for me, I don't know about Kay, but I always feel like I'm sorting that out to kind of guide people, because districts have different avenues they want to reach kids. Work-based learning is kind of popular too right now. So SAMR was part of our commitment. And then as far as Sarah's question about professional organizations, do teachers look to for ed tech professional development? I don't know if you're familiar with Iowa, but we have state agencies, so that's what Kay and I work through. So we provide professional development opportunities. But Jeremy, is there anything you would like to add on professional organizations that you look for ed tech besides the agency?
No.
I just added iTech in there. iTech
Yeah,
was
iTech.
just a couple days, was yesterday
sure.
and Monday.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, that's the statewide technology conference in Iowa, and it's awesome.
Hard to keep track of all the email lists that I'm on and where I'm getting little bits and pieces of information from. So
Yeah.
I did put into the chat just what we had talked about with SAMR. It was part of our network improvement community goal. Our first year was more about learning the model, making sure teachers were educated about it and could identify the different levels. So we did a lot of examples, and we had teachers try to identify where they were using it in their classroom. And then we did a lot of communication about, hey, is that really a substitution? Is that an augmentation? And then in year two, our challenge to each teacher was to try and take a lesson and move it into the M or the R side of the model, where it really starts getting into a changing learning environment.
I was going to also add, at the agency, we have literacy consultants and math consultants and science consultants and our special ed. So Carrie and I and our team also pick those guys' brains to say, what's the latest thing that we need to be aware of so we can support? Like, for example, literacy is really focused on the workshop model in our agency. So how do we support that? So our learning is also around strategies related to content areas. So pedagogy, what's best practice in science, what's best practice in math, so we can better support that when we go out to support our teachers in classrooms.
So we have time for me, so I'm going to be selfish and ask a question, to ask one last question, I think. And I this really comes from, I love to listen to you all talk about the professional learning work you do, because, you really try to embed it in people's jobs. You try and make it kind of sustained and ongoing. And it's really about getting better at the profession and building competencies. So what do you do? What strategy do you use, or strategies, when you've got folks that really look at the PD as like, oh, I got to get my hours for my recertification, right? How do you change that mindset so that you're helping them get better, helping them build competencies, and then delivering what that clarity might define as that high level of quality professional development?
I'm gonna let you go, Jeremy, since you're right there.
Come on, I thought we agreed that I was going to go last and just say I agree. So, okay, I'll start. All right. First off, it's kind of about building the relationship with the teacher. Just getting to know who they are, why they're responding the way they do, and in that relationship, finding that key thing that will kind of open their eyes to yes, it is something new to learn about, but there's some potential in it. There's some benefits in it. And not just showing how it will benefit the students, but then also how it will benefit the teacher. And I think with some teachers, you got to throw in that aspect of it too. It might make parts of your job easier. Yeah, you might have to go out and research different things, but when you turn over some of that learning to the students, then some of that pressure of directing and being that stage on the stage is off of you. And sometimes your job's a little easier, but a lot of it is, showing that outcome, showing how it benefits the students, giving them some data, showing them examples of what their peers are doing as well. Just some of the neat and interesting things that the students can come up with if they're given some of that freedom and some of the tools.
Also, I think having been in education for many years and having many different roles in education, from high school principal, teacher librarian, kindergarten teacher, fifth grade teacher, I realized that at first when I started teaching, it was about compliance. I was really big into getting my kids to do what they're supposed to do. Management is so important to get kids to perform. And as I transitioned in my career, I realized that, okay, well, I think engaging kids is important. So then I switched my gears and I created and spent hours doing things in that, oh my gosh, I want to make sure that they're so engaged in learning. I want them to learn. And I know that if I get them engaged, that's definitely, you know, going to help. Well, then through an opportunity for having kids have access to technology, I discovered we ended up in our high school putting Blender on all the laptops, not just kids who wanted to put it on all of them. And we just had a random group of kids that started using it and figuring out the design process of Blender, and it kept moving and moving until they wanted a 3D printer. We created an independent course for them, and they were able to complete tasks that it surprised me. And so then the kids became empowered, which is amazing to experience when you see kids control learning and have a direction of their own. And watching those students transition into their own, I mean, I couldn't teach them that. If I could teach them Blender, then I'd probably work for some other company and make a lot more money. So it was just like watching that development and that empowerment happen through access to opportunity and outside the walls of the school opened my mind immensely. And since then, it's like, how do we create experiences like that for all learners and not just an opportunity that happened? And so I think that's kind of the mission at our agency, is to move beyond just spots of integration and try to get system-wide movement. And I just think that over the course of years, it's just amazing. We don't give kids enough justice on what they can do. They are amazing people that can do amazing things when given the opportunity.
Now I can say I agree. I was gonna say too, sometimes it becomes a force in a way when they find out they have to take a class and they're like, I just don't know what class to take, and my IT person said I need to take this one. And so by the end of the course, usually they're like, oh my gosh, look at all the things that I can do now. I feel more confident. I feel going to my peers, I know who to go to. Sometimes it is just that sometimes they don't, and they need that little push. And sometimes too, like Jeremy said, it's the peer pressure too. What are they doing next door that I can do as well? So it really comes down to what's a need. Sometimes it's killing two birds with one stone. For example, we're working on formative assessment. Well, how can I get better at formative assessment? What tools can I use to help me with that? So I walk in and say, hey, are you working on formative assessment? Here's something that's going to make it more efficient. Here's something that's going to make it easier for you to collect that data.
And I think too, like Kay and I had an opportunity today. We happened to be in a workshop with Peter DeWitt and John Hattie, and just some of the things that John mentioned about students, like students are we put them through the system of retain the information and bring it back to me. And so you may have some resistance when you start making changes, because it puts the learning in the perspective of this kids own it. And some kids are very open to that, and some kids it's harder to shift their mindset. Because they're used to know what information of factual information do I need to retain and give back to you. And when that system is changed, it can bring great results, and it can also bring some interesting things. I had a teacher that had a flipped classroom for math, and it was a struggle for some students to make that flip, because they just wanted to take that math sheet and go to study hall and do it with their friend and copy answers from each other and not really learn the content. So when they're given the opportunity to watch a video at home, come together in class and work and show how you did your work and collaborate, some of them were less comfortable with that. And there's a lot of conversation with kids around their style of learning, and there's a lot of conversation about what's important in your learning. And there was a lot of excitement for kids that could then, instead of staying in one spot, could move at a quicker pace too. So there's all sorts of gamuts of feelings and emotions when it comes to switching up some pedagogy, but it's great when you see the empowerment that happens from it.
Yeah, when the students ask, well, how do I do it? And you say, I don't know. Or what's the right answer? And you say, I don't know. They get a little scared sometimes. And it's different than what they've learned all the way through. But it's different for the teachers too. And I think we can both grow at the same time.
Thank you. And Jeremy, that really put a nice little bow on what I was thinking too, is what I just heard you describe, Carrie, is similar for adults with when we're asking them to do different things with technology and the professional learning we provide. So we're about at the end of our time together today. And so I want to thank Jeremy, Carrie, and Kay for your time today and all your great insights. It's always a pleasure to hear you all talk shop about technology, professional learning, and improving outcomes for kids. So really appreciate it. Really appreciate everyone who joined us today and submitted questions or just listened in. We value all of your feedback here at REL Midwest. So as we close out today, you will have a survey pop up, and Cora's put some information about that in the chat for you all as well. Please take some time and tell us how we did and give us some feedback. We will take that and we use it, from a lens of continuous improvement to always get better at what we're doing to provide great research, great assistance to the field, to educators in our region. So with that, we'll finish up. Again, thanks so much. And I would also encourage you as before you leave to follow our panelists on Twitter and get some of the information that you all were asking about there and some resources as well. So have a great evening, and we hope to see you again at another REL Midwest event.